Thank you very much for arranging this important conference on this important topic. That is a topic that we are all dealing with from different point of views. But to start, multiculturalism, is it efficient in Europe? That's the headline for my speech. And it's a huge headline, really. And I'm not an expert, I'm a politician. So I will give you some of my reflections on that headline. First of all, I think it is important to define what we mean. And for me, it's a mixture of individuals. That is what I'm talking about, a mixture of individuals. Others are defining by other words. But I think that is part of our discussion to come. And for me, it's also the question of universal human rights, equal for all, beyond borders, no borders for that. And I heard, and we have seen already, that others could define by clothes, by arts, by music, by food, by religion, by ethnicity, or other things. But for me, it's the question of mixture of individuals, all alike and all same basic human rights. And by that, is it efficient in Europe today? Multicultural Europe, is it efficient? Well, we have all heard some political leaders talking about no, this is the end of it. We heard Angela Merkel mentioning that. We also heard Sarkozy and others. But for me, the answer is yes, indeed it is. We have created an open space for individuals in Europe, as well as for capital and companies and other things. But we have created an open space for individuals in Europe. And we have done it based on values, developed over a long time of interaction in different ways between individuals in Europe. And not only Europe, the universal scene is there. But even if I say that it is efficient, I must say it is challenged at the same time. Although today we see that the new mood is coming up due to the different crises that we all have seen. And even before that, before the crisis, we must admit that we were not efficient to all individuals. There are borders within Europe. If you define yourself as a Roma people, Roma personality, Roma individual, you will see that there are borders. There are ceilings. If you define yourself as, for instance, homo, bi, transsexual, or a queer person, you will find yourself seeing borders. We have seen, and we have, if you define yourself as a Jew, or if you define yourself as a Muslim, you see that there are borders. We have seen that in the scrutiny that has been done, for instance, by Thomas Hammarberg, the Ombudsman for Council of Europe on human rights. So we have things to deal with within. And if we go down to all our different societies, we will find other individuals that feel that there are borders. They are not included in the society. We have earlier heard about fears, and I would like to stick to that for a moment. Because talking about fears has been very common. Fears of the others to come. Fear of the past, history. But let us see that even if we think that we are living in the best of nations or whatever, we are living in an old Europe, in an old Russia. We are becoming rather old, and we need newcomers. We need new energy into our societies. We need new ideas. We need new things to happen. And for me, it's very interesting to see, for instance, Canada, that has been so welcoming for newcomers, asking them to come and help to build a prosperous tomorrow for all that lives there. And I think that is, in a way, an idea that could be helpful, because we have been looking in things in another way. We have been talking about, later years, we've been talking about globalization, as it was a big threat. We have seen anti-globalization movements coming up and so on. But we haven't seen the possibilities. Although we could have, because all the time we can see in history, there has been a globalization going on throughout our history. Without that, Sweden wouldn't have been a place for people. They have been just forests in Sweden. But thanks to globalization, people have arrived from all over and helped building a better, more prosperous country. And throughout history we have feared a lot. Oh, what we have feared. I guess some of you have feared in history books the Vikings, coming from Sweden, going abroad with big horns and very, very strong and created a lot of fears. We have feared the French, we have feared the Arabics, we have feared the Russians, we have feared the Germans. Well, there's a lot of fears. And you can talk about capitalism, you can talk about communists, you can talk about liberalists, you can talk about rulers. That has been going on. And there's a lot of roots to look for if you want to create new fears. You can always connect to something back there. And it is also very easy to fear the others. It's also very easy to always blame the others and see what is done by the others and not by yourselves. And when you don't know really the others, you may fear them. And when you don't feel that you are in charge of your life, you may feel a fear. You feel a threat from the others or the enemies, talking about what was said latest. You may react with fear. And I think we have to look into those things and deal with the root causes of this as well. Because there are forces, peoples, it's always people, individuals, that have an interest to use fear factor to build power on fear. But also, we must recognize the human will to belong, because we all want to belong. Belong to society, belong to families, belong to wherever, local community, an organization or whatever. We connect, it's human beings connecting to each other. So we must also see that. And I think, talking for a moment as a mother, I would like just to mention how we can be raising our children. We can do it authoritarian, do that. You can do it with fear. or by dialogue and respect for their views, for their thoughts, for their visions, and also talk and have a good dialogue on that. I myself, being a daughter of a Swedish police, saw very early and couldn't understand why the people surrounding me in the society, my young friends, were afraid of my father. Why should they? But suddenly I understood that the other parents had used him to create fear. And I think I learned a lesson by that. You can create a vision and by that rule children. And you can create a vision and by that rule a country. And you can create visions of fear and you can rule organizations or whatever. But as I mentioned before, Sweden is built on immigrants, as I guess most of the countries. Coming from a town myself of immigrants, we have almost 50% of newcomers, 50% immigrants in my town. It's a town of global economy at the same time. We have Scania, I guess some of you know that company, creating lorries all over the world. It is a global company. 100 years ago, very local, but it has done a journey for becoming global. It has invited people from all over to come and help them build the lorries, to build the company, the global company. And they have learned the lesson. To become a global company, to become prosperous, you have to invite people, include people, and bring them on board, and connect, and go by that also benefiting yourself. And I think we have lessons to learn even from the companies, because there are good companies that have been scrutinizing the benefits of multiculturalism by increasing their connection to markets, by variety of viewpoints that can make more flexible solutions. Someone have been looking into this very crucial, and I've seen also the challenges with communication, that you have to communicate to make everyone knowing and give all able to take part. You have to create a mood for handling the resistance. Has been talking about that earlier as well. The resistance to change, because it is a resistance to change. I think it's, when you look upon the children, the first word many children says, no. It's the first word they use, many small children. And why? Just to divorce and make sure that you are shown as a personality. And that is something that we have all our lives. So we have to handle resistance to change. And we have to find successful management in those companies as well. There are other things, but I think those lessons that has been learned in successful global companies could also be learned by us. And as someone said before, democracy is a fight for every generation. But I would say tolerance and respect is also a fight for every generation. And we have a bad habit to lean back and say, well, now it's done, and think that, well, it will go on forever. But we know that it will not be the case. So we have to really look into this. And we in Sweden have also our own challenges. I will just end up by mentioning some of the Swedish lessons. Because we have also seen in Sweden that there are fears and that there is extremism and so on. We have now been we have had shootings in the streets of Malmö, one of the second or the third biggest town. Been outlaws and also extremists shooting, actually. Not as big as in Norway, thanks God, but we have seen it. But we have also learned that we have to look into our own backyard and see what's there. So we are now for the third time looking into human rights issues in Sweden, see how far we have come, see what has been achieved. We have a scrutiny now coming up on xenophobia. It's going on, just to try to see what's there for us. And we have learned by actually dealing with children, for instance, when we talked about the anti-Semitism that we saw, that there is a very big need of knowledge. So we have had in schools a lot of discussions going on, talking about the situation for the Jews during the Second World War and the Holocaust. And that has been showing that the views of the young people have changed due to those dialogues that has been going on in all our schools. So knowledge is very important. Knowledge you can use for different things, but it is important to go into the schools. And we have also the question of laws, equal for all. And that is important. Safeguard the rules and the laws for everyone, but also safeguard the right of minority. And I hear today that there is a view in Europe coming up that stop here, we are the majority, we shall decide, but we have to make sure that we safeguard the minorities' rights as well. And for that we have the human rights, the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, and that is a very important second level to safeguard the minority rights and the human rights in Europe. And I think that is important for us as well. And we have also to look into the threats that is there and see what we can find. I saw some figures about jobs, the fear of losing jobs by immigrants, for instance. I saw that in Russia it is 75% that are saying that by immigrants you will lose your job or have problems with job. In UK 62%, in Sweden 23%. So we have it all over, but we have to deal with the question of that, to create people opportunities for people, so all of us can feel that we could compete and take part, and also in the new market system. Because I think that is part of the things that we have to look into the root causes of the xenophobia and the extremism in our societies. Even though I fully agree that we will never be in the situation where everyone have outrooted it, because it's part of life, it's part of the dialogue, and it's something that we have to deal with in an open society, in a transparent way, and with good dialogue. But I will just end by mentioning a poem or a short text from Martin Niemöller. He was living in Germany 1892. And you could switch from one to another, what I now say. But it's a question of raising voices and have a say and take part. First, they came for the communists. and I didn't speak out because I wasn't communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. And I think that is also the question, that we have to speak out, and we have to be open-minded and have a good debate and a dialogue, and don't hide beyond others. Take your voice, raise it. Thank you very much.